What's your view on John Lee's appointment as Chief Secretary for Administration?
Clearly, it's a reward for his loyalty and his achievement in quelling the unrest of 2019. But as Chief Secretary, he has a much broader portfolio and a very important role of coordinating the work of different departments.
Regina, you started your career in public service as an administrative officer in the 1970s, and you're arguably the most experienced person in LegCo and NIXCO. I still remember that you gave a speech at the Hong Kong Democratic Foundation in June 2003 on national security and Article 23. Hong Kong was much more rational and peaceful back then. What happened to Hong Kong in the last few years? How do we mend a divided society?
Alan, you are absolutely right that in 2003, life was much more peaceful. Even though Article 23 did not get enacted, the crowds dispersed as soon as government said it would not push ahead with second reading, resumption. But 2019 was different. Even though the chief executive said she would not push ahead with second reading resumption, the riots continued. In fact, it got worse and worse. And of course, there are different theories for the unrest. One theory is there are external forces behind it. People have been planning it, working on it, sowing the seeds of discords and supporting the rioters from behind the scene, providing resources and all that. And there's another theory that that's because of a lot of discontent, local discontent with the government's inability to solve some structural problems, like the widening wealth gap, land and housing problem. And I think we can also attribute it to, in a way, a lack of moral leadership from the top of government. We are a highly open, diverse society, but there seems to be a lack of some values which hold us together. In fact, on the contrary, there have been a clash of values or cultures in Hong Kong which seem to have been pulling us apart more and more. And I think even with the passage, the commencement of the National Security Act, which has quelled the unrest, brought back peace and stability, and restored law and order, there is a long way to go before we can really heal the rift in our society.
What's your view on John Lee's appointment as Chief Secretary for Administration?
First of all, it's unprecedented. The first time we have a non-administrative officer as Chief Secretary. Clearly, it's a reward for his loyalty and his achievement in quelling the unrest of 2019. But as Chief Secretary, he has a much broader portfolio and a very important role of coordinating the work of different departments. Whether he could really deliver that remains to be seen.
And how did we get into a geopolitical contest between China and the United States? And why are we not putting across the message to the international community?
I think you are definitely right that we are now the picky in the middle. We are caught in the crosshairs amid the geopolitical conflict between China and US. And that has come about because of the rise of China. And the US, cannot come to terms with the reality that they could be displaced. They must be number one. There are all sorts of forecasts saying China's economy would overtake the US in a few years' time. China's already overtaken the US in terms of trade, and the absorption of investment. And China's high-tech development is coming up extremely strong. So I think the US clearly feels compelled to contain the growth of China.
Our diplomatic friends has been telling me that the things that they feared would happen, such as the fall of Hong Kong, didn't happen in 1997. It's happening now. Do you agree with that view?
I don't think there is any fall of Hong Kong. I don't think Hong Kong has fallen. A lot of these views, exemplify the books you displayed. They are biased against Hong Kong. Stephen Fines, for example, I've known him for many years. You see, he was already determined that Hong Kong cannot succeed under one country, two systems. Even before any riots have taken place. He's a very biased person. I know many people who are not shedding any tears about his departure. Many people are saying good riddance.
Well, you probably don't agree with Stephen Vine's view, who left Hong Kong citing white terror. I also noticed that you've been active in accepting interviews from the international media, including the Hard Talk from BBC. Was there a concerted effort to smear Hong Kong, or was it because we don't know international politics and we don't know how to put our message across?
I think the Western media, they are biased against Hong Kong. It's part of their biased narrative on China. I think many of them are determined that Hong Kong cannot possibly succeed under one country, two systems. And they live on a different planet as far as what happened in Hong Kong in 2019 is concerned. For example, for us, these are, violence, vandalism has been affecting our lives, but they see it as a fight for freedom and democracy. So their view of the events in Hong Kong is completely skewed.
You were the director of industries in the Hong Kong government in 1995 to 1996.
Yes.
And you know a lot about Hong Kong's early development in innovation and technology, including putting together this book on innovation policy and the limits of laissez-faire.
Thank you for bringing this. Thank you. Thank you very much. My think tank spent, I think, almost $600,000 to hire a team of international scholars to study how to get innovation policy right. But when this study has been completed, I had a hard time even presenting this to John Tsang when he was financial secretary. I had to work through his political assistant, Frankie Ip, and it was not easy for me even to have a photo op with John Tsang.
Well, here's the photo op, not John Tsang. Well, is the proposal to move the container terminal to reclaim land south of Changchao and release the land in Kwai Chung for housing and commercial use a better alternative to Lantau Tomorrow Vision?
Well, I think government should really think hard about relocating the ports. The container throughput is bound to go down, and we should look at releasing the premium harbourfront land at Kwai Chung for redevelopment. Hong Kong is full of stories of redevelopment. Whether it should go to Changchao South or Guishan Island in Zhuhai or elsewhere is something for study. But I think government should really think hard about releasing that land, that at least 300 hectares or more of harbourfront land for redevelopment.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, Regina, for the interview.